Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here this morning with Scott Beechuk, one of our partners from Norwest, and Alex Bard, Managing Director from Redpoint. And we are going to have an amazing session this morning. Let's start with Scott, zooming out a little. Before we get specifically into the topic at hand of AI SDRs, can you set the stage about what we're going through, the uncertainty we're facing as a market right now? What is your take on how AI technology can help organizations navigate these economic uncertainties?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us both, Robert. It's awesome to be here, and excited to have this conversation with you. And boy, what a time, right? Jumping right in here. This year has been, a very dynamic year. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of twists and turns. And I think for companies, as they think about how to navigate the waters of all the volatility that we've been seeing this year and all the economic challenges that we've been up against, I think most companies that I talk to are thinking about how they continue to turn the knobs on becoming more efficient, how they do more with less. A lot of the themes that we saw building up over the last couple of years, particularly with AI, are being accelerated now just due to the uncertainty right now in the markets. And I think the good news is there's a lot of very healthy companies out there, companies that have built some real momentum, some real, they've been filling their pipelines over the last several quarters. It's been a really good run. And now they're asking the question, how do we keep up that energy? How do we keep up that momentum? And, they're also setting themselves up for, I think, a future where human work is going to continue to be automated. I know we're going to talk a lot about that today, but now the thought process is less about, okay, well, how can I add AI as an ingredient? Now, how can I use AI as a fundamental platform for building the future of my business?
You bring up a really interesting point, which, given these uncertainties that we're experiencing, I've been very excited about the potential that we can really generate out of this. I've always been a big believer that coming out of situations like these, there are new dynamics that present themselves and potentially opportunities. Alex, do you feel the same way about that? Looking at sort of everything we're experiencing, what is about the promise of AI SDRs agents that excites you most, given these sort of this environment we're in?
Yeah, I mean, again, Robert, thank you so much for having Scott and I really enjoy these conversations with you all. The thing I would say is, you first of all, in terms of what's happening in the environment, Scott touched upon this. There's obviously a bit of turbulence right now. A lot of it is around sort of the trade wars and tariffs, and markets don't like uncertainty, and clearly we're still figuring it all out on kind of a global scale. The advice for companies is just to operate through it and focus on the business. I think the companies that will be able to sort of navigate through any sort of turbulence will be the ones that are still growth companies. You still see in public and private markets the highest multiples, the highest value being paid to companies that are growth companies. So that is kind of like the headline. It is still very important to grow. Now, where you're getting the ultra premiums are where you're a growth company, but you're doing it efficiently. You remember in the sort of the COVID era, you had growth at all costs. It didn't matter the cost of getting to that sort of growth. Today, again, public and private growth, but efficient growth is where all the premiums are. Now, how do you get to efficient growth? Well, the companies that are getting to efficient growth are the ones that are doing the best job of leveraging AI inside of the firewall to be able to do the job that they had done previously with people, now to do that more with technology. And I sort of step back out of all of that, and I think about just the major technological shifts over the years and the opportunities that those shifts create. And we all know, all of us were at Salesforce.com together. Benioff and the rest of the team did such a great job of taking advantage of the move to cloud. And that was like the technological shift going from on-prem to cloud, and the business model that supported it going from perpetual licensing to SaaS and monthly pricing, that created this like massive dislocation and opportunity for lots of amazing companies to be built. Not since then have we seen the same thing happening where it's both a technological and business model shift, and that is with AI. And AI is, I think, going to be even more disrupted than the move to cloud was. And I mean that both in terms of the technology itself and what it enables you to do, but also the business model that's sort of underpinning it more around work than necessarily an enabling technology. And so I think it is, regardless of what's happening in the market, some incredibly exciting time for the companies that are forward leaning into this shift.
Scott, do you have anything you're sort of would add to that? And if you put yourself in a customer's shoes, for example, we've been talking about the companies that are selling these technologies, but as you think about as a customer, and companies may be looking to tighten budgets and think a little bit differently, what would you say about companies thinking about potentially embracing AI agents to supplement headcount or other areas where they might see benefits?
Yeah, I think Alex touched on an important point, which is that we are experiencing a dramatic shift. It's almost like we're turning a massive chapter in the book of this entire journey that we're on since the beginning of the internet. Companies, I hear companies think a lot about AI as an enabler, as a way to, help them be more productive, or maybe they can, augment their human workers and become more efficient. Then there's other companies that view this in a totally different way. They view this chapter as being the next 10 to 20 years of where the entire world is going, not just the technology world. I mean, bear in mind that AI is going to benefit technology companies, but it's going to benefit non-tech companies as well. We see CPG and manufacturing getting, completely revolutionized in how they think about running their businesses and being productive as we look toward the future. And so I think that mental mind shift is something that we're seeing in 2025. It's really exciting, because now, more than just, thinking about how do we, maybe we adopt a little bit of AI in some app that we currently use, companies are starting to say, okay, what are the next 10 years of our business really going to look like? We're starting to see AI agents now, for example, that are doing more than what we've experienced initially with ChatGPT. We're starting to see AI agents do deeper level reasoning. And if you can imagine AI continuing down that road, which it will continue to think more creatively. It'll think more complex. It'll be more sequential. It'll be multi-step. In a way, it just becomes more human. And as you start to think about how that affects our ability to sell, it's going to not only help our lowest order sellers and agents, but it's going to help everyone up the entire sales stack, all the way to the CRO in the company. And I think that's part of why, companies that are fully embracing the 10 to 20 year vision are not looking at this as, let's just simply help our SDRs, but they're thinking about their AEs, they're thinking about their managers, they're thinking about the entire chain all the way to the CEO. And I think the companies that are leaning into this the most, all of this new thinking is actually coming from the CEO right on down.
Yeah, Robert, I'll maybe add to something Scott said that I think is exciting. Like by virtue of the position that Scott and I are in, being in venture capital, it's an amazing time. We get to see like some of the latest and greatest innovations, and we get to see it across different markets, and we get to see it in different stages, right? And so we're seeing already today AI in customer service and support, augmenting humans in certain cases when it's more of a level 2 or level 3 type support, replacing humans altogether when it's level 1 and sort of more generally repetitive. We're seeing AI applied in the engineering sort of discipline, where AI is now this great co-pilot, but it's increasingly, with companies like Cursor and others, doing more of the actual writing of code. There was a tweet published from Y Combinator, which is one of the largest sort of incubators of tech companies, that 25% of the most recent graduating class had 95% of their code written by AI. Just think about that, right? Now, it's the written code is more like a junior developer, and over time, it'll start to move up the stack. And then now we're starting to also see it in the go-to-market stack. And so you can imagine all these various disciplines, AI sort of coming in and getting better and better and better. The other thing that I think is pretty amazing, and Scott touched upon this, is as we're moving up the sort of the rungs of AI capability, more and more real value is unlocked from originally when it was Chat GPT 3.5 to now you can see it with 4.0 and sort of later what you're able to do. But now it won't be kind of a one-off, like you ask it a question, it gives you an answer. It'll be more, you give it a task and it goes off and actually does that task. And I think as you think about that across engineering, you think about that across go-to-market, you think about that in finance, you think about that in every aspect of your business, there's going to be some really incredible unlocks. And the companies that, as I mentioned earlier, I think that are thinking that way and they're at the forefront of it and they're thinking about it 10 to 20 years out are really going to be able to take advantage of what I think is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
I love that, especially as you're leaning into this. Obviously, the two of you sit on a lot of different boards of companies out there today. Give me your perspective. If you were in the shoes of the CMO and you were coming to the board to present your vision over the next year, what would you expect to hear from somebody who you feel is leaning into this? What would you want to hear from them?
Want me to jump in? Sure.
Either of you would be great.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with Alex more. This is probably the most exciting time that we've ever experienced in technology. I was talking to a CMO the other day who is going through a wholesale rethinking of the entire stack. A lot of CMOs have, 20 or 30 different SaaS applications today, and that's not uncommon. In fact, I've seen some companies with more. And it's not uncommon to sort of cycle through those applications on a regular basis and try new things. But, if you're looking backwards, if you look in the rearview mirror, what you see is a lot of passive software systems that CMOs could try, throw things against the wall, see what sticks, maybe try a new algorithm here, a new algorithm there, maybe we can, pick up a couple more points of conversion along the way. But this conversation, I'd love to name the company, but it's a portfolio company, and the conversation took a totally different turn, which for me was super exciting. It was, okay, let's actually picture what does the future of the world look like when AI is powering everything that touches the customer. From the moment that customer has an interaction with our brand anonymously, all the way through the entire funnel into the point where we are engaged with that customer and we continue to support them. So this is where marketing and sales start to, kind of have a blurry line, which for me gets very exciting because AI doesn't think in terms of marketing or sales. AI does exactly what we tell it to do. And great AI systems will reason their way through, okay, how can we help connect and create more meaningful connections and relationships at every step of the customer journey. And that was the thought process in that CMO's mind. It was, how do we unlock more meaningful human connections at every step from the anonymous first touch to, deep into the sales funnel? And how do we automate all that to a point where there's less overhead, less noise, less spam, and just real deep human connection and make better use of everyone's time? And that's a pretty exciting way to think about the future with AI.
Yeah, I'll add just to what Scott said, which is, software historically has been about, some incremental improvement to what a human does, right? Most applications have been CRUD applications, create, read, update, kind of delete. And the better we got, the more efficient it made sort of us at doing those things. I think this is the time not to think about incrementalism. This is the time to kind of burn the boats and rethink it all together, right? Start from zero. Don't think about, I've got this stack of tools and how do I make each one of them slightly better? Or how do I plug in one tool to kind of replace this weird Jenga of stuff that I've sort of accumulated over the last N number of years? This is like a moment to burn it all down and kind of rebuild it with a totally new mindset, which is super exciting. I mean, if you recall when Scott and I first invested in Qualified, it was not an AI SDR company. The founding sort of principle of the company was marketing automation as it had existed is broken. It's too complex. It's too brittle. It's got too many workflows. This is all about sort of human engagement. Let's think about how do you simplify and improve that sort of human engagement around progressing somebody through the purchasing experience. That same principle holds true today. Qualified have just done an incredible job of understanding and seeing AI as the catalyst to all the things that we've built to do that even better. And where I think we are sort of on our journey today, we kind of talk about AI SDR and kind of why everybody's excited about it. That's just the beginning. Really, this is about completely rethinking the entire GTM stack, as Scott said. It's not this distinct sales is here and marketing is here and kind of performance is here and brand is here. It's all now one thing. And I think Qualified is an incredible sort of entry wedge into that. But our opportunity is to rewrite a GTM stack on the foundation and principles of all the data that we have, the signals that we have, and leveraging AI to be able to create that amazing end-to-end journey for a customer.
I love that. In fact, it sort of dovetails with a lot of what I've been reading and hearing. The analyst reports talk about the continued investment in software technology, especially in B2B. As you think about the next few years, where do you believe the lion's share of that technology investment is going to go? How do you think this plays out if you were to project over the next 2, 3, 4 years? And maybe Alex, start with you.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we've been talking about this. If I'm the CEO, and I think Scott is absolutely right, this can come bottoms up with kind of like individual, drivers rather than passengers inside of the company. I sort of really appreciate this book written by Frank Slootman, who was one of the best CEOs in the Valley, the CEO of ServiceNow, and then Snowflake. He wrote this book called Amp It Up. And then Amp It Up, sort of one of the central points is, as an employee inside of a company, are you a driver or a passenger? So drivers inside of companies will be ones that embrace AI sort of early, play with it, use it, and infect the company, sort of bottoms up. But I also think that for real transformational change, it has to come top down. It has to come from the executives. It has to come from the CEO. So when you think about investment, if I were the CEO of any company at any scale, a massive company today down to a small company, I would be pushing across the entire organization this thinking of how do we become better, smarter, faster, more efficient, leveraging AI. And if you don't have an AI story inside of your department, and if it's not universal across the company, I think you're really going to get lapped by somebody very, very quickly. And so when I think about that investment, I think it's across every part of the organization. We talked about it. We see it, the low-hanging fruit in customer service. There's a lot of repeatability and sort of, people aren't happy in their role, and there's a lot of churn. And so like we see it there. We now see it in engineering. We're seeing it in the GTM stack. I'm seeing it a lot in finance. We're seeing it in legal. Literally, I mean, you're hearing us kind of talk about every aspect of the business, but I think that that's absolutely right.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with that, Alex. I think there's also another thing that great companies I keep hearing repeatedly, and that is, there's nothing to be afraid of here. Across the employee base at every level, AI is going to, it's going to supercharge every role in a company. Okay. It's going to automate some of the work, but new roles and new opportunities to be more human and do more interesting work are already being created and will continue to be created at an accelerating rate. And so, you work your way up from the SDR and you start to think, well, Qualified and Piper are the SDR's best friend. Why? Because they work alongside your SDRs and they help move things quicker through into the sales funnel. It helps helps customers become, understand their customers better, helps them fill the pipeline more, creates more qualified opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. And then you start to think about what happens over time. Well, an AE spends a lot of his or her time doing a lot of manual data entry. I mean, nobody likes entering information into your CRM. Nobody that I know of. And so what does AI help us do? Well, it certainly could eliminate most data entry as we go into that process. But what about all the other overhead that exists and all of the sort of the waste that we have as humans doing our jobs throughout the entire go-to-market organization? Well, I'm a sales manager, for example, and I know I'm getting way outside the scope of the AI SDR and Piper today, but I'm thinking you asked for the next 2 to 3 years. I start to think about how does AI help the sales manager do a better job of predicting, doing forecast calls, reporting up through the management chain to the CMO and to the CRO and to the CEO and the CFO. How does AI help everyone in the entire organization do their jobs more efficiently so that we can do the thing that we're most qualified to do as human beings, which is build more human connections. And building deeper, trusted relationships with other human beings helps, well, it makes everybody's life better. And it also helps us sell more. So I think that's where we're going.
Do you see what Scott did there? He said, what are we more qualified to do? I picked up on that. Well done.
That was well done. Actually, I couldn't think of a better way to put a bow on this session. Scott, Alex, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us. And really excited to see what is going to be happening over the next number of months, but also number of years. So with that, thank you both.
Thank you.
Much.